Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Hopefully this will be a good afternoon and a good conversation using our new virtual format. Stop cutting up all after you're on the management part. So this shows you what happens. All of you sitting next to somebody in law school, Mary Ann Auld, who's now the managing partner of Kelly Hart, and just a big hairy deal, and I were actually in practice court together, a big hairy deal. Yeah, you are. And on mock trial teams together, and here decades later, we're still in touch and doing all this kind of stuff. Bailey Rhodes, to her right, is partner. That's right, gosh. With the web firm in College Station, and a recent past president 2 years ago of the Texas Young Lawyers Association, and a big hairy deal in her own right. You, Victor, get introduced last because you're sitting in your office as city attorney for the city of Brownsville. So we'll give you the government employee discount on this. Victor, another Baylor grad, is both a past president of the Texas Young Lawyers Association, serves on the board, and has just been named as the acting city attorney for the city of Brownsville, in addition to having had a vibrant trial practice there in the Valley. So we are either the best people to talk to you about skills you should have to be successful in the practice of law, or the worst, because despite the soft, furry, fuzzy reputation of practice work professors, we actually will give it to you straight. And so this is a conversation about how can you best prepare to succeed in practice. We teach you a lot of things about the law. We teach you a lot of things about communicating and advocating, and many of those will be useful. But there really are other things. Unless we kept you here for a decade, Rob could teach you everything that you need to know. So the conversation today is going to talk in a very candid way about what it takes to succeed in the practice of law, whether you're in a private law firm, whether you are doing governmental work, whether you're on the civil side, the criminal side, transactional work, whatever that might be. So first of all, panelists, thank you for joining us and sharing your time and expertise with us today. Let's start with the business of law. Mary Ann, what do students need to know and understand about the business of practicing law?
Can y'all hear me? Did I get the button right? Good. Just knew I was going to screw that up. You need to understand about the business of practicing law that it is in fact a business. And while it's a profession, you can expect that the people that you work for and work with to be looking at it on a whole lot of different levels, but not the least of which is that you're designed to work in a way that will make the firm money. So that means that a strong work ethic, being efficient, being organized, being responsive, doing all of the things that you would need to do in any business will be very, very deeply appreciated and expected. At the same time that you also have the rules of professional responsibility and the other things that you'll be doing to make sure that you are staying in your lane ethically and professionally, but never losing sight of the fact that at the end of the day, you do want to make money for your firm, and that's one of the ways to make yourself valuable. Certainly not the only way, but it is one of the ways.
Bailey, what's your experience been like with the business of law?
Okay, right. How about now? You want to swap mine?
Oh, wait, did I get it? There we go. Okay, I'm the one that can't learn to work your microphone. I started my firm straight out of Baylor Law School, so I've had the experience of being a brand new lawyer to now a shareholder. So it's a whole, I've seen it all the way through. And I think that something that's really important as a young new lawyer is to recognize your role in that business. And part of that is having really frank conversations with clients. Now, you're probably not going to be expected your first day on the job or as a law clerk to do that, but to understand that
You know, you're working with real people, whether it is an individual or a large corporation, they're still paying valuable money for your services. And sometimes that means that you have to have some hard conversations about the economics of what you're doing. And clients are always happy not to be surprised. So I think it's important to realize even as a young lawyer, there's some value in you understanding that you need to be efficient, effective for your clients. You also need to be prepared to answer for the work that you're doing.
Victor, how does that look as you've been transitioning into government? Is there a business aspect if you're in the government serving the public?
Yeah, like in any business, it's about customer service. And I think everybody here has actually said communication in some form or fashion. So I did have experience in dealing with as outside counsel for municipalities in which we build hourly, right? And so internally, as from the in-house role, it's still customer service, and it's making sure that you communicate expectations to your client. And I think a lot of times, in law school, we get so into the weeds of the text or, the case law that, we have to summarize. But I think a really important skill to develop is that that emotional intelligence, and the communication that comes along with it.
Having run a firm, I would also add that there is power in your understanding the metrics that are used at a law firm for compensation and promotion. And that while you may want to be paid a certain amount, or you may think that you are worth a certain amount, or you may even argue that the market would bear a certain salary or compensation package, at the end of the day, if you cannot justify that your hours not merely billed, but actually collected, and your contributions where you can say, yes, but we collected this on me. And remember, what they pay you in salary is not the only packet, because you want crazy things like health insurance, retirement contributions, all of those benefits that can add anywhere from 10 to 30% plus over,
We use $100,000 as what we call the nut for an associate. It's more if you're a partner. So take whatever your salary is, add 100 grand to it, and that's the way that your salary is going to be looked at in terms of, what you're taking out, what the benefit is to you versus your what's collected. So if you're not collecting more than that, then the firm is losing money on you.
Yeah, which thinks if you start with an $80,000, $90,000 salary, you really need to be north of 200,000 collected each year before you can demonstrate you're more than a break-even proposition. And so those are all important things to know. What is getting collected on your work every month? Because you bill the time. Do you actually see the sheets back to see what the partner wrote off? And if 30% of your time is being written off, you probably need to have a conversation with somebody about what that looks like.
And why? I mean, that's the other part of that too. And I'm mindful as we're starting. I mean, if you're just starting out, you're not necessarily going to go in month one and start asking for all this. But in the first year, certainly you need to start thinking about what that is and what that means for your trajectory going forward, right? So don't go in and expect necessarily to understand all that day one, but these are the kinds of things you need to be thinking about, because this is what those who are thinking about the business of the law firm on the other side are going to be looking at. So just having an awareness of that is going to set you up to be far more successful. And it'll also help you understand the questions you need to ask at the end of the year when you get a review and the raise and those kinds of things too.
Well, that segues really nicely into the process of receiving feedback and criticism, which we all love, right? We like to be told we did a terrible job. Bailey, what does that look like for young lawyers, and how can that process be turned into a positive?
So I think it depends largely on, who's giving you the feedback, right? Some people are very nurturing and they want to be positive all the time. Your better feedback are probably the people that are a little bit more critical and open and honest, as long as they're not, abusive to a degree. But I think that important thing is just having open dialogue, not being afraid to go and ask for, you know, what changes were made to, say, a pleading you draft, or if you draft a letter that goes out, ask, if you're not giving feedback, ask to see those things. And I know in our office, our associates, you know, they draft things for us, and if they bring me something and I'm in a hurry, I may change it up myself and rush to get it out. Well, I'm not teaching well if I do that. I do a better job even if I go ahead and get it out, if I talk to them about the things that I decided to change, whether it's my style or if something was technically really wrong with it. But I'll tell very briefly my story that one of my senior partners loves to tell about me. My very first hearing, I had gotten him ready for it. I wasn't supposed to talk. I was just going. I'd been, you know, licensed for like 2 months. And he turned to me and he said, you want to go? Like mid-argument. And I mean, I had no idea where he was going, and I just froze. And he loves to tell this story. We got back to the office. He's a Baylor lawyer. He graduated in 67 or 68. And he walked me to my office. He's like, that's never gonna happen again, right? Right, no, sir. It never did. But that for me was, you know, important feedback, and he didn't, you know, he just carried on. He didn't freak out at me. He was probably prepared for me to freeze. But at the same time, we joke about that all the time, that, you know, you learn from that. And I'm getting off on story time in our fireside chat, but I think the point is ask for it if you're not getting it. If you are getting it, be receptive to it, and learn something.
Victor, that ties into the issue of communication. What's your take on that? Criticism, feedback, and good communications in the law firm setting?
Yeah, so you know, communication can be in multiple ways. It can be, you know, in person. It can be like Bailey's. It was in the middle of game time, right? And so it's just being receptive to that critical those critical points. And I think as supervisors, I'm now in that supervisor role. I'm very new, but it's a lot harder to make time for that. But I think as law students, being confident enough to, you know, ask for time to be set aside for, you know, if you haven't had a review and you're looking for that input, it's not unreasonable to ask for that of your, you know, supervisor or you know, managing attorney or a partner who's in charge. So I would recommend to if you're not getting that, request it.
I would add that there's a time and a place for feedback, and you need to be honest with yourself. If you're in an emotional or reactive position, you're not going to hear feedback well, and you're sure not going to learn from it, because what is the very first thing we do? We justify, but you don't understand. I had 20 other things going on, but this was really hard and you didn't give me enough time. Even if that's all true, it didn't change that sometimes in the profession, the time constraints are brief and you've got to do good work even under harsh conditions. So the other thing I would encourage you is, even if the partner or whomever kind of dumps on you, take it in, but be willing to go back at a calmer time and say, I really want to be sure I get this right next time, or could we talk about that? Because defending yourself in the situation may not be the best career advancer that you can have. Which leads us to, what's the climate and the culture of the law firm? And is it important, Mary Ann, to figure that out and blend into it?
Well, I would say that it certainly is important to figure it out. Whether, I don't know exactly what you mean by blending in.
Well-
You've been successful in everything you've ever done, as far as I can tell, and you don't ever blend in. So I would say there's a way to be very successful without blending in. And so that's where you kind of have to figure out where that line is. Yes, you absolutely need to understand the culture of the firm that you join.
And what does that mean? Because we're talking about that, but they may not know what we mean by the culture of a firm.
What is the overall sense of how we get things done? Is everyone in the office most of the time? Is it a place where everyone is remote? Is it open doors? Is it suits and ties? Is it casual attire? Is it, I mean, it's all of those things. You know, one of the things that Professor Fraley said when we started this was, if we could keep you here 10 years, you'd learn everything. And I'm going to push back on that a little bit. I think 3 years is the perfect amount of time. God knows by the time you finish practice board, it's time to go. And then the next few years, you're getting the rest of that education on site. If you go to a firm and have an interest and an ability to stay there and build your practice, that's where the rest of that learning is going to come in. And that goes back to the culture of the firm. Yeah, you're going to bring your knowledge of the law and all of the great skills that you've learned here at Baylor with you, but you then have to adapt those in the way that suits the place that you're going. If you go to a firm that is quite large and young lawyers don't have much of an opportunity to do a lot of practical things, go to court, talk in court, take depositions, sit with clients when they're negotiating the terms of the deal, you know, whatever that is, you're going to have to accept that to some degree and recognize that the fact that you don't like that isn't going to make that ginormous firm change the way they do things. If you go to a smaller firm, a mid-sized firm may still have a lot of lawyers, but there may be more local control of how the firm operates and what the culture is of that firm. So, you know, part of what I would suggest to the extent you can is try to do on the front end a little looking and figuring out of what is it that I really want out of my practice. So that when you go into the practice, you're already in a place where you think, I'm going to like this group, I'm going to like this practice. You're not going to be, you know, hearts and flowers every day, but it's a place where I want to be and learn and feel supported and develop my practice. If you can do that from the front end of things, it's going to make things far better as you progress along. If you find yourself in a place where you think this is not at all what I want it to be, either you're going to have to adapt or you're going to have to find another place to go.
Bailey, what's your experience then with, because you're in a mid-sized community, mid-sized legal community, what's the culture like there and what did you find about adapting to that?
Sure. So
Okay, there we go. I'm not very good at this microphone. You know, I'm in College Station, and so we're small legal market, like Professor Fraley said. And you've got to want to be there either because you want to be in the town or because you want to be in a firm like ours. I was interviewing a law student this morning for a clerkship, and I told him, you know, in some ways it's easy. I say this with a grain of salt. It's easier to bill 100 hours a week, and that is your only focus. And that's the only thing that you're going to do. And we don't want that at our firm. We're a firm that's focused. We want you to try to have balance, just kind of an icky word, but that's important to us. Whatever that looks like for you, we want our folks to be able to have more than just our legal practice. And that's not for everybody, and that's okay. And I think that sometimes people think, oh, well, you know, I either wanted to be at a big firm, but I didn't get that, or I feel like I should want to go to a small place, or I'm an Aggie, so I need to go to College Station, whatever. But if they don't have the buy-in for the type of firm we are, then they're not going to like it. They're not going to be successful there. They're not going to get integrated into the community. And that's a little more difficult in a small town than it would be if you're in Houston or Dallas or Austin and you've got, you know, tons of opportunities and probably already have friends there for law school or undergrad. So I think that's the big thing was for me, really realizing that that's where I wanted to be. And that's what I encourage our young lawyers and our clerks, that we're trying you out, you know, it's a summer-long job interview for us. It's also your summer to try us out and see if you like what you see. And you shouldn't feel like just because I spent time there, that means I have to now spend my whole career at this place. The beauty of the clerkships programs.
Well, and I love that comment, Bailey, what you see. I remember when I was clerking, you know, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and the associates would leave at 5:30, but one of them confessed to me that they were required to come back at 7 to get the rest of their work done. But the firm wanted to portray that there was this great work-life balance. And so be cognizant of more than the marketing, oh, we're a firm that loves quality and life balance and all of this, and see if that's translates. How many, working parents who are the primary caretakers of small children are partners? When do people come? When do people go? There is nothing wrong with hard work and getting paid for it, but the two often go hand in hand. And Victor, I wonder what that looks like as you merge into from outside counsel to inside counsel in a government position.
Actually, I'll take a note from my TYLA days as running for TYLA president. Bailey knows as TYLA president or candidate for TYLA president, you go and you traverse the entire state of Texas over a whole month, and you shake hands with as many young lawyers as you can, and that involves you. Of course, this dates us right, pre-COVID when we would actually go and visit all law firms. But being able to go and step foot into all these different law firms across the state of Texas, you really get a flavor for the diversity and culture in each and every one of these firms. Both diversity in the big law, group, your more intimate, boutique firms, but in just, for example, the big law firms. You have some that are very, work-life balance. They take that as a priority, and then others you step into the lobby door, and it's a little bit darker. It's quiet as a library. You don't get many smiles, and so using your opportunities as law students to do clerkships or just kind of test different sectors out, different law firms out. I think that's a great opportunity for you to kind of engage what that culture is. But it's very diverse, even in big law or boutique firms in their own regard.
Let's start talking about what some of the challenges will be as you get out into practice. You've already had the experience of hybrid learning. We're here in person. We don't see each other's noses and lips anymore. Victor, what is remote work looking like for you? Do you think it's around to stay? What do you like about it? What do you not like about it?
I think it's around to stay in certain respects. Especially on the public sector, it was directors, managers, the city commissioners, the governing body wanted to see people, in their seats, in their offices. But with technology, a lot of our meetings, those that aren't governed by Texas Open Meetings Act, but any of our regular meetings, we're doing them virtually, and it makes it a lot more productive. I will say the counter to that is that you end up squeezing more meetings in a day than you're used to. But I think it's around to stay in some form, which is, I think it's a good thing.
Marian, what's your thought about in-person versus remote?
I think that going forward, I hope that we're going to have some sort of a mix, because I think that we've learned that we can do some things better remotely. If you're just doing a scheduling conference, if you're doing some things that doesn't require physical presence, we're not having an evidentiary hearing or doing some things where it's really important to be in the physical presence of a key witness that's being deposed or whatever it is. There are ways to make the technology work. And to Victor's point, you can be far more efficient. Why have everybody drive from all over the place and circle the building and find parking and come in and get there for a 10-second hearing where everybody agrees that what we said we were going to do, we're going to do. I mean, that just doesn't make much sense. So for those things, I think that it's important that we keep that to the extent that we can. I think that for a lot of things, in person is just irreplaceable. And so it's going to be up to us to navigate where the line is between the things that can be done efficiently remotely and those that we really do require physical presence. Because I too have been around since dinosaurs roamed the earth, I can tell you that at this point, if I was not Managed Martin, if I was just back in my days as an appellate lawyer, I could do every single thing that I do remotely and probably not skip a beat, right? I could talk with my team remotely. I could do my research and writing of briefs and share drafts remotely. I could prepare for oral argument. I've had oral arguments where we did just this and sat in front of the computer instead of going to the courthouse and doing all that. Because I've been doing it for 30, whatever years we've been doing it. For people that are just starting out, and this is where I'm going to encourage you to be open to this idea. I don't think you want to start at a firm, if you can help it, that is 100% remote. You will not learn in the same way. You just can't help but be hindered by that remote experience. If you really want to be a good deal broker, if you really want to be a good trial lawyer, if you want to do these things well, starting out, you really do need to be around the people that are actually getting that done and showing you the way. It's not to say that you won't catch up if you are in a situation that because of COVID or whatever else means that you for a period of time are going to have to be remote, but I would want to get to the office as quickly as I can. One of the things that I've thought all along, and now my young lawyers are saying the same thing, is that there's only so much you can do in your pajamas at your dining table. And then you really need to be around the people, whether they're directly addressing you or not. Just being in the office, hearing the conversation, going back and forth to your kitchen or to whatever it is, and listening and being part of those conversations, having somebody grab you and say, hey, I need to run something by you. I just want to know your thought. Does this make sense? All of those experiences that cannot happen when everyone is remote are the things that are really going to help you develop most rapidly the skill set that is going to be essential for your success. So once you have that baseline, it is easier for a firm to be flexible with you and for it to not be holding you back. But in the beginning, I think it's just essential to developing those skills that are so critical that you be there in person.
You're nodding in agreement, Bailey. What do you think?
I completely agree. You know, our firm never completely shut down, but when we were on lockdown, I would say probably 25% of our lawyers were in the office most days, with everybody else at home and our staff primarily at home. And what we saw was that for about 6 weeks, it was fine. Hours were the same. Everybody was pretty productive because you have this buildup of work, right? It was all these things that we had all been working on and had in process, and we sort of, everybody knew what to do. And then at about that, really right when things were starting to reopen, it was, productivity was just kind of going down, and it's easy to track when you go by the hour. We were still as busy with new cases coming in, fortunately, but there was just this, everybody was missing the urgency and the intensity that is so, so important to the practice of law. And everybody came back and it just shot right back up. And what that kind of taught everyone is, yeah, it's nice to have the flexibility and be able to work from home whenever you need to for whatever reason, but there's so much value in the collaboration and the time in the office, and we have the data to show it. I think the value that we have now is that our leadership just in general is more open to, hey, you know, I've got to stay home this morning because I got to run a kid to the doctor or whatever, and I can effectively work doing that. So I think that, you know, there's a lot more openness now to working remotely, and I think that's going to benefit us going forward. But I completely agree. As a young lawyer, there is so much value in that collaboration, and I mean, I love it. It's important in my practice too, but you guys take advantage of that and really try to get in a situation where you can benefit from this around you.
Well, and I will say, young lawyers, and this is going to sound terrible, but you remember the word fungible from contracts? Young lawyers are kind of fungible because you come out of law school. If you went to Baylor, you'll have more practical skills than your colleagues. That was certainly my experience. But you still have a lot of new on you that gets knocked off in the first few years. And so part of the skill set for you is standing out. And it is much harder to stand out in a 2-inch square than it is in the office. To be able to go in, to have them see that you're working late, to see that you turn something in ahead of the deadline, to be there if the partner says, hey, we need to take this client to lunch, who's available? And there really is, to me, a benefit to that physicality of seeing that you are Johnny on the spot and available that disappears with Zoom. From your perspective, it's also difficult to be mentored remotely, right? All those little teaching moments that Bailey and Marianne were talking about tend to come in the space in between, where you just hear the partner talking to opposing counsel and you're listening to tone and how they structured it or how they responded when a hearing went badly. And those are the subtle messages and mentoring that happen more effectively in person. And I don't know of a way to replicate that on Zoom. I just don't.
I don't either. And certainly we're gonna hope that's not the case, but I would say if you do find yourself in the short term in a situation where you have to do things remotely and you haven't yet had the opportunity to create relationships, the things that I would suggest doing are being extremely responsive. If you're supposed to be at home working and someone emails you and you don't respond for 4 hours, whether it's true or not, it suggests that you didn't look at your email for 4 hours and it's the middle of a workday and we're supposed to be working remotely. So even if you do find, it's not going to be a replacement for the things that we're talking about doing, but if you find yourself in that situation, be responsive, offer to help, do those things that show that you're really paying attention and you're communicating. If somebody asks you to look at something and it's going to take you a while to do it or to get to it, respond immediately and say, I'm in the middle of X, Y, and Z, but I'll look at it just as soon as I can and I'll get back with you later this afternoon so that they know you're on it and looking at things. And you just kind of have to make do with communication, which is a hugely underestimated part of this process too, until you have the opportunity all to be in the office together.
I think that ties into another skill that is extremely valuable for young lawyers, and that's the ability to be proactive. One of the expressions in my household is your poor planning does not constitute my emergency. And so Bailey, how do you proactively plan? How do you get on top of the workload, the clients, the community things? You've got 2 children. How do you eat that elephant?
Lots of calendars. But seriously, I think that, having a good handle on the important deadlines, whenever you are you're trying to be active in your community, trying to, parent or have a dog or whatever, eat whatever, those things are in practice law. You've got to constantly, know what's out there, know what you need to be doing and have a plan for it. And also, as a first-year associate, you may not be able to do it, but ask for help and delegate. And it's something that even you guys should be able to have conversations about. Something we work really hard, starting with our law clerks and with our young associates, is you have to be able to have a conversation. The partner gives you a project and you've got 14 deadlines in the next 2 days. We're not telling you that you tell that partner no, but you may have to go to that partner or a person that we have mentors for our associates. And maybe you go to them and you say, okay, I need help delegating this and knowing, what I need to prioritize. It's kind of back to the communication word, but you're seldom going to get in trouble for having that conversation. I hope you would never get in trouble for having it. But you are going to get in trouble if you, just get yourself completely underwater and haven't taken the time to prioritize it and look what's out there. And I think, we joke that lawyers are like, give us a deadline and it'll be done by the deadline, right? Whether we know about it 6 months away or 2 days before, it's going to get done, by the deadline. Try not to be that way and try to teach yourself not to be that way early in your practice. But ultimately, communicate in every aspect of your life, but particularly as projects come in.
Victor, how do you proactively get a handle on all the demands on your time?
I just copy Bailey style. No, it's just, and I joke around about that, but Bailey won't share this, and I'll put her on the spot, and I can see her get like blush already behind her mask. But Bailey is she's a great mother to her kids, and if you follow her on Instagram or any social media, she's a great chef in the kitchen. On top of that, she's she's a phenomenal partner at her firm, very talented, and always giving back to the community. And I think that's also most of the attorneys most of the good attorneys that you'll run into. But the only way I know Bailey accomplishes that, and I think all of us do, is by being efficient with our time. So it's one thing to kind of organize things and plan it out, but if you're not efficient with the time that you give yourself, things start falling through the cracks. So I'm just going to add efficiency to whatever Bailey said, because she's phenomenal.
Marianne, you manage 6 offices, 7, where are you allowed to now? 6, yeah. How do you stay proactively on top of that, and how does that translate for young lawyers?
But a lot of help. I mean, just a lot of structural help, so that different offices have different partners in charge, and different sections have different partners who help with the work of that particular section. All of that. I mean, I think in terms of the efficiency of all of it, we've got a lot of things that we do that help us. I mean, one of my biggest nightmares when I first started in practice was I'd wake up in the middle of the night feeling like I had missed a deadline. It was a real thing, and you would just be kind of freaked out. Well, happily, we have a system that when something comes in, it's an internal docketing system, and all of the things that you're supposed to be doing pop up on the docketing system. In addition to many calendars and using the docketing system, I also encourage all of our young lawyers to docket interim deadlines that are just internal, so that the fact that something has to be filed on a particular day is extremely important to keep in the back of your mind. But probably more important is to give yourself the opportunity to get it done way before that, so that the busy partner is going to have time to look at it. You have to recognize if you're the person that is at, so to speak, the bottom of the food chain, and you're doing the work that has to go up through maybe 2 or 3 different levels of review, the fact that the ultimate deadline is out there sometime in the future doesn't help you much. You've got to get it done way before that. So even, with the work things that I'm responsible for, I always docket something way in advance of that, so that I know that I'm going to be able to get it done and have the time with it. And then if there's some emergency that comes up or whatever else, maybe it doesn't get done right then, but that still is the priority. And for young lawyers, really important for you to be communicating. We keep coming back to that word. If somebody says, hey, I need you to write a response to this, and it has to be filed by such and such, and they give you the ultimate deadline, initially, before you get to know how each of the people in your firm works, you may want to say, okay, so if it's due on Tuesday, does it work for you if I get it to you on the preceding Thursday, or, whatever, when would you like to have the draft, those kinds of things, so that you can make sure that you stay organized, that you don't drop things, and that you meet all the expectations that are coming your way.
I think another good discipline to get into is looking at the week ahead. Before you leave the office on Friday, look at the next week, because you've got 2 days there that are buffer days. Now, ideally, you're watching football or being a great chef or training your dog or curing cancer, whatever you do with your weekends. But it also gives you a buffer if there's something that wasn't on your radar that has popped up. And that lets you look on that Friday and say, what are the priorities? What do I need to get done? And to think about how much time is it going to take? Is there any of this I could just knock out now before I left and build in some margin in that week? I'm also a big believer in lists. As good as calendars are, I love me a good list. And it's very satisfying to me to mark things off my list and feel that sense of forward progress, that I am getting tasks done. I'm also a big believer in do the hardest thing you have to do first, because for me, with my little procrastinating heart, the harder it is, or honestly, the less confident I am in my capacity to handle that task, the more I'm likely to put off, and I can tell that because it stays on the list for day after day after day, and that tells me I'm not taking care of business in a way that I probably need to. And I think that helps too. The other thing I would say is, you know, you have the same 24 hours in your day that the President of the United States, Marie Curie, Albert Einstein had. And you'll find a lot more time to do fulfilling things if you make good choices about your time. I mean, Bailey, how long did it take you to learn to become a fabulous chef?
At a time,
Yeah.
years and years of practice.
Mhm. And how much of that time were you binge watching Netflix?
Yeah, none of it.
Yeah, so we make choices about our time, and it's easy to default to things that are soothing and palliative, but they don't really develop you as a person. And so at least be intentional about those time choices. There's nothing wrong, you know, season 2 of Bridgerton is coming out, I will be there. But I am doing that at a cost. So,
I'm gonna tell a story about the great Tom Reevely, who I clerked for and who was a great friend to this law school. I don't know if any of you would have ever had the opportunity to see him, but he died last year at age 99, and he was still on the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals, which is pretty remarkable. One of the things that Tom Reevely said when we were talking about stuff as clerks, he was always in the office, and he was always in a jacket and a tie. And that you could come up to the office on Saturday and he would be alone in the building, and you'd knock on his door and you'd say, come in, and he would be sitting at his desk on a Saturday alone in the building in a jacket and a tie. And I was like, what is going on here? We got to be really good friends. And I could say, help me understand what is going on with this. And you're always here at certain hours, and he always got to the office super early. So he worked from like 6 to 9, pretty much by himself, nobody interrupted, 6 to 9 a.m. And I said, help me understand this. And he said, I find that for me, everybody has to find their own rhythm, but for me, I am so much more efficient, so much more productive if I have a routine. And I know that if I come to the office and discipline myself to be here in the morning at 6 and work uninterrupted from 6 to 9, for every hour I work between 6 to 9 a.m., it's like 3 hours any other part. So, you know, it's by the time I work 6 to 9, it's like working a 9-hour day because I didn't get interrupted. I was fresh. I started, I was dressed the way I'm always dressed. I felt like myself. I thought about that a lot when we would all sit around in sweats during COVID, right? If you don't feel like yourself, it's hard to get done the things that you do. And so I'm not suggesting that you be Tom Reevely and wear a suit and tie 24/7 or even work from 6 to 9. But I will say, when I had kids and when that were at home and a practice and all of these things, I immediately went back to those thoughts and thought, okay, it's hard for me to have as set in stone a routine as he had at that point in his life. But to the extent I can get into some sort of a routine, figure out what works best for me. Maybe it's not going to be 6 to 9 in the morning. Maybe it's going to have to be something where I go home and take care of kids and go to soccer games and do that stuff, and then they go to bed, and then it's going to be 8 to 11 in the evening, whatever that is, that I know I can count on. It makes me feel like me, and where I'm having some efficient me time to get some of these things done. It makes all the difference in the world in terms of your stress level and in terms of that feeling of I'm taking care of things instead of feeling like you're just buckshot that's been shot in 1,000 different directions and you can't quite pull it all back together.
Victor, when you think about young lawyers and skills they can contribute to the firm, to the government, what are aspects of that these young lawyers could work on developing that would add real value to their firm?
I think a skill that's like it's underappreciated, both from now as a supervisor, but also as a new attorney coming into any office, is creative problem solving, right? And that's a skill that each attorney, each young lawyer that comes in is uniquely equipped with, because we all have different perspectives. And so it's having the confidence of knowing the law that you've learned, and then applying your perspective and just like your practical ideas on how to solve problems, because at the end of the day, we're trying to solve problems, trying to solve cases, develop cases, and we're getting paid a lot of money not to solve easy problems. They're complex problems, right, for the most part. And so it's being able to just apply that creative problem solving skill, and I think that would be the thing I recommend the most to young lawyers is, yes, have a as deep of a understanding of the law that you can, and law school kind of drills that into you, and of course you develop. I wrote a note down. You shared you still have some new that needs to get knocked off of you, and so I thought that was great. But in that, it's new, right? It's a new perspective, new tools through the Baylor LLM litigation management program. I'm learning new things, new tools that I can use and incorporate into my practice right now. So it's as a young lawyer, I'm bringing those skill sets to the office. I think is very important.
Bailey, what do you think about that? What are skills that a young lawyer brings that are invaluable, that are different and distinct from what older lawyers or the firm as a whole might know?
Well, you're all better at researching than anybody that is in your offices because you are doing it all the time. And we tell our new lawyers, you know more law today when you walk in the door than any of us do. Our practical experience is way beyond yours, but you're walking fresh out of law school, studying for that bar exam. You know a lot of information. So don't forget that. Now, don't walk in with a chip on your shoulder like I'm the best one here in the office, because you probably don't have legal experience, but don't forget that you do know things, that you've got skills that have been developed in this law school, and those bring value. I was thinking the same thing as Victor, the creativity. We all look at life through different lenses based on our experience, our education, where we came from. And he mentioned it earlier, but I'm going to hone and add to it is confidence. So don't be afraid to take that creativity and take what you walk out of here with and speak up. Somebody may tell you, well, I'm not going to go with that, I don't agree, but they're never going to fault you for bringing an idea to the table. And often those new, fresh ideas can make a difference, or at least, spur someone to go down a different path. So confidence in that creativity and the research skills.
Mary Ann?
Yeah, I mean, you do already, to Bailey's point, have the ability to research far more efficiently than anybody else that you're going to be working with, even those that are out of law school just a few years ago. I mean, I don't know, y'all are incredible. And so you want to take that. And I do think confidence is important, but I also think that you need to make sure that you find somebody that can have confidence with you and for you. You need to convince them, whether you're trying to do this or not, that you're ready to take things to the next level. We hire a lot of associates in any given year. We just had 7, I think, start at the same time. And they're all different. They're all at different stages. They all are remarkable in their own right, but they're not all going to be ready to do things at the same time. So there are some that come in that are raring to go. And some of them don't necessarily have the judgment to do what they think they're ready to do. And so it's our job to kind of pull them back, but to not kill the spirit that they got. So I guess what I would say, if you're coming in, what you got is that newness. And maybe some of it needs to get knocked off, and some of it needs to be cultivated, and some of it needs to be channeled a little more appropriately, but keep that enthusiasm, because that enthusiasm is what some people lack. And so be interested. If someone gives you the opportunity to do something, do it. If somebody comes in and says, hey, I just got called to a hearing and I've got a deposition scheduled and I can give you the file if you can get ready and it's not that complex, I'll walk you through it. Your instinct might be to say, I don't know if I can do that, say yes. If someone has come to you to say, I think you can do this, would you please do this, then say yes to that. And so make sure that you find people ultimately, and that this is easier said than done, but that will work with you to help you figure out where you are and what you're capable of doing. And if they say to you, you may be young, you may be a little green, You may still need to have some of the new knocked off, but I think you can do it. Believe them, take advantage of that opportunity and do it. And it will be amazing to you how quickly you will be in the game and more important and fun projects will come your way.
The other thing I would remind you is that you truly perceive the world differently. When Mary and I were in law school, there were 2 computers in the law school. One was in the dean's office and it had all the admission data, and the other was in the law review office, and you had to book an hour of time, and you brought a floppy disk about the size of this laptop with you, and it was amazing because you didn't have to retype your law review. So to say we did not grow up with technology, that gives you some perspective. But you have, and you understand social media, and you understand not just legal research, but you creepily stalk people who ask you out on dates. You know how to do this. And let me tell you, I have depended for more than a decade on young lawyers when I go pick a jury for 2 things. Number one, you research on the fly. You can dig around their social media, their online presence, and you can find things that genuinely bring value to the client. Which means that also translates, if your firm is marketing and trying to build up a presence in social media, be it Instagram or LinkedIn, you have that ability. And so harness that knowledge for the good of the firm. I'd be happy to help with, can I help you set up your LinkedIn profile? Those are things that you are really good at and can help. The other thing is generationally, I mean, we're going to see a generational gap, and I want to talk about this next. As older leadership moves out, someone's going to have to step in and fill the void, and you do have a different perspective. So whether you're meeting with a client who may be younger, maybe from a different culture, I think you are more aware of that and might be able to connect with a little more emotional intelligence than perhaps someone older. I know a lot of older lawyers work hard on that, but you may have perspective that in addition to problem solving leads to consensus and leadership. And so those are skills to work on too. Look for opportunities to add value for the client or for the firm. We've got a few minutes left, so we'll keep talking. But now's the time, if you have questions, throw your little paws up in the air and we'll call on you. And if you don't, we'll just keep talking. So this generational turnover, Bailey, how are people going to get trial experience?
That's it. Goodness gracious.
Still works the same way.
I know,
It's
I
a
know.
push.
It doesn't like me. Oh my goodness. See, this is so rude.
Swap with you.
Okay.
See if it'll. So it's increasingly difficult. We're constantly looking at our firm and ways to do it and to incorporate young lawyers. Part of it, I think, is from your perspective, asking, making sure that people know that you want that experience. We try to stay, on top of, okay, who hasn't run a trial, who hasn't taken a deposition, who hasn't done a hearing, so that we know, who we need to be getting exposure to. But then also, don't be afraid to take a case that you're not necessarily, within your firm, interested in. Like insurance defense cases are great for young lawyers. If your firm has an insurance defense section and you've got flexibility, and I'm speaking from a firm where we have a lot of flexibility in what you do, but you may be able to say, I don't want to be an insurance defense lawyer, but I really want to try a case, and they can give you some of their smaller cases. Family law is the same way at my firm. We have 1 lawyer or 2 that do a lot of our family law, but I'm telling you all the time, you want to go to court, do family law, because those people go to court all the time. So look for ways, number one, that, places that maybe even if you're not interested in that area, that you see are going to trial more. And that involves asking questions to the lawyers, just paying attention in your office to what cases are getting tried and taking advantage of those. And then the other piece is being vocal, with your partners. It may be taking on a small pro bono case that you can go do. And if you look at like the board certification applications, it doesn't matter if it was pro bono, it's that it was a trial. So I think just don't shy away from those areas that you maybe kind of less traditional, may not be, you know what you want to go do. But if you want to go be a commercial litigator, and you want to prove that you've got some trial chops, then find some ways to get in the courtroom.
What do you think, Victor?
I remember my first year or two practicing. Gary Hendrickson had been practicing, I think, close to 45 years. And when it came to, getting on Lexis, when it came to e-filing, he would just become extremely frustrated. And, but he was always busy. So what I would do is I said, hey, Gary, I can help you. Don't worry about it. And so I kind of became his mentor as it related to new technology. And that opened up the window for discussions and him mentoring me with all of his, practical experience in litigating. So I think it's just finding, what each person can give to the other. I think there's enough to be shared there to close that gap.
Marianne? Or talk about something different. That's cool too.
I think what I really want y'all, I would kind of going off of both what Victor and Bailey said, you need to make it clear to the people that you're working with that you want the experience that you want. Now, again, be nice about it and all that kind of stuff, but just to the extent you didn't know, I'm really interested in this, you can tell people. And if you have opportunities for that, I would love to work with you on it or help in whatever way I can, that sort of thing. I'm mindful that not everyone is going to go into a trial practice or an appellate practice. And so it's the same thing if you're going into transactional practice to say, I'll work harder to get my billable hours in and won't necessarily even bill for the time if you'll just let me sit in on this meeting so I can see what you're doing. Those kinds of things. It demonstrates your interest in whatever area of practice you're going into. And when you can say to someone, I won't bill for it, I just want to be there. And I promise I'll get the rest of the work done that I need to. That says to someone, this is someone who really is in this for the long haul and is investing in what it is that he or she wants his or her practice to be. On the trial side, I am a big believer, and so are the co-chairs of the litigation section. I've worked with them for a long time to kind of get them to this point though. And a lot of it is because I came through this school. If we don't get people up on their feet or at a deposition, preferably both, within 2 years, we are not doing our job. We're not the kind of firm, and I don't think any firm should be, but that's a judgment for another day, that just has people come in and sit and do things, and then we'll worry about whatever skills they develop later on. If you've come out of Baylor, you already have got such a good skill set, whatever practice area you go into, but especially if you're going to go do trial law, if you don't use it, you lose it. And if you're not up on your feet, going to court, even if it's on things that aren't terribly controversial or complex or those kinds of things, you really lose the benefit of having gone through this program. Other people, while they may be going to lesser law schools like UT or, Harvard or whatever it is, are going to catch up if everybody stays the same. So you want to, having come out of Baylor, say, I'm comfortable doing this. If you have something that comes up on the fly, I am happy to cover a hearing. I'm happy to step in for that deposition. I'm happy to do those things, which, if you're not comfortable with that, be aware of that, but also don't hold yourself back. And so I think it is terribly helpful when people will come in and say, I am interested in doing this. We had a young lawyer who wanted to be in the appellate section. That's not the way that we saw that lawyer and his skill at the moment, but he said, I get it. I'm going to do trial work and you've already got a full slate with the appellate team, but if there are other things I can help do with, this is something I want to do. Well, now he's a partner of the appellate section because he turned out to be really good. He made himself available. When we had those opportunities, we gave it to him. Had he not voiced that opinion, we wouldn't have had the opportunity to do what we did, and he probably would have taken his talents elsewhere. So make sure that in a respectful way, timing always being an important part of this too. You don't want to walk in the middle of a busy day and say, hey, I'm here with my list of demands. But figure out a way to let people know who can actually help you accomplish the goals that you have, what you're interested in doing. And it's going to be terribly helpful to get you that experience. And they're going to want then to use you as a transitional person as these older lawyers move on.
All right, we're gonna go around to everybody for a final tip, a final practice skill to develop. And since I didn't tell you, that was one of the questions. I will start with be an intentional architect of your own life. Decide what's important to you and invest time in learning how to become that. Become a student of your craft. Every time I see a lawyer try a case, I take away something that I could do differently and better. And I've tried a lot of cases, but there's always room to learn. So be curious. Don't expect somebody else to send you to a CLE. Seek out the ones that will help curate your skill set to your goals. If you want to be a trial lawyer and the areas right now where you get trial law are criminal, family, and insurance defense, fine. Maybe you go put in a few years at one of those firms to get you to the next place. I mean, this is a strategic profession and career that builds on itself, but only if you are honest with yourself about what you want to do, what you're willing to do to get there. And so think about that. Also be willing to take a risk and fail, because I hate to tell you this, you really will learn more from the things where you fail. And contrary to Marianne's kind statement, I fail a lot. And so you will learn more from that, but you've got to be the architect. You can't sit back and passively expect everybody to hand it to you. Marianne, your tip.
Don't be fragile. If you really want people to help you, you've got to hear the challenging news. My favorite thing is when even it's a great associate and I'm giving a review and I have all these great things, and the thing they say is, tell me the bad news. Tell me what I can do to be better. Tell me where I've let things down or I need to do more, that sort of thing. So don't be fragile. And I mean this not as something contrary to what Liz just said. It's a bolt-on. If you're going to be intentional about figuring out where you want to go and how you're going to get there, you can't be fragile. You've got to be tough. You can't, we were laughing at lunch. We teach you about the eggshell plaintiff. You don't get to be the eggshell plaintiff, right? You've got to be tougher than that. And there will be moments where you may feel defeated or whatever else, and that's okay too. Rise above it. Understand, especially if you're in a place where people do have confidence for you and they are trying to help you accomplish your goals. Seek out those things that are going to make you better. And that means you can't be fragile about listening to what people say in terms of an assessment. You want to hear what they have to say. Some of it you might legitimately discard after you thought it through rationally, but you still need to hear it and figure out what to do with it in order to get better and get where you ultimately want to be.
Bailey.
Give back. We could talk about community service and all of those important things, but I'm going to specifically speak to giving back to the profession. If you want to go all in and spend all of your hours doing it, talk to Victor and I, and we'll tell you how to be TYLA president. But you don't have to do that. You can come sit in this room and talk to young lawyers. And even though I sat right there in contracts and I'm like stressful, I'm just afraid that he's going to call on me. Professor Trail might throw chalk my way if I say again. It's still very valuable to come and share this information. You're also fortunate to be here and be in this profession. But you need to continue developing and helping young lawyers develop, whether that's in your firm, in a law school setting, to the state bar. There's a lot of value in that, and doing that will give you something that helps you, build on the things that we have just heard as values for you guys. So that'll make a difference, not just for you, though, for those coming behind you, who you hope to be able to delegate to in a few years, right? So give back.
Victor.
I think my tip would just be to remember how wonderful this profession can be to you and to your community. This is one of the most noble professions. That may be altruistic and fluffy, but no, really. I mean, of the many careers that you could have chosen to pursue, the practice of law for a long time has been a standard in the community. And people will look up to you. But with great opportunities come great responsibilities. And so over the course of time, you will be challenged. You will be stressed out. You will be tired. It's not an easy profession, but it is, my opinion, one of the most admirable professions that you could pursue, just because of the impact you can have on individuals in your community. And so my tip would be just remember that, because there will be tough times, but if you remember that, I think you'll have a long and successful and happy career.
I'd like to thank all of our panelists, Bailey, Marianne, Victor, for spending some time with us this afternoon and sharing your collective wisdom about how these law students can prepare better for practice. Thank you all for joining us and have a great afternoon.